Hi fantasy managers, welcome to FPL Team Talk. In this video, I'm going to do a draft for game week 1. I'm under no illusions, it may well change before the deadline, which is less than a week away. Constantly things are happening, players being signed that alter our selection process, our thoughts. So in this one, I'm going to go through the players I've absolutely nailed in my side at the moment. Then at the end, I'm going to go through different options. Who else could make the team? What would happen if we moved a few things around and formations? All that good stuff. Remember, don't forget to subscribe. We're here for you with the rest of the season. We're going to look at team selections, captaincy each week, watch lists, all that good stuff. So I hope you find this useful. Click on that like button. And in the meantime, let's take a look. Let's start off in defence then. First name on the sheet for me has to be Reece James. £6 million. He's been pretty much the first name on the sheet since maybe even the end of last season. When his price came out, he was just absolutely nailed for me. 6 million. He's got great fixtures. I'll be lying if I say I'm absolutely happy with the Chelsea defence. There are some worries for me, especially in pre-season, what Tuchel's come out and said. But for 6 million, he offers such an attacking threat. 0.46 in terms of his expected goal involvement. Only Trent tops that. And yes, it was over a shorter period of time that James produced that. But if he gets anywhere near that sort of attacking return, and he certainly passes the eye test, then he's got to be one that's going to be in your side. I slightly favour him over Chilwell, just because I think there's less competition on that right-hand side, whereas Chilwell's got Alonso. He's also been out for a lot longer with his injuries. There's a little bit, maybe, wrapping him up in cotton wool, bringing him back in, whereas James hasn't got that competition. Yes, there is Hudson-Odoi, maybe Talabar, someone like that competing, but I think he's got more security on that right-hand side. Whether he plays a 4 at the back, whether he's a wing back, I don't care. I think James is just an absolute must-have for me. So he's absolutely nailed in my side and has been pretty much from day one. The next one I'm going to go for is Zinchenko, new to the Arsenal lineup. Good fixtures they've got as well. I wouldn't say that Arsenal defence was particularly impressive last year. But 5 million is a good price for someone who could potentially be moving up later on to think into midfield. We'll have to wait and see what his role is. For 5 million, I'm prepared to take the risk. I think at 0.25, it's a decent XGI in any case. Certainly not far off some of those top ones. When you look at the likes of Cancelo at 7 million, 0.29, yes, he's playing in a better defence. But for me, Zinchenko, I just like him. I think he's got that flexibility to play further forward. At 5 million, possibly playing midfield with those Arsenal fixtures. He covers Arsenal for me. Plus, he has a bit of attacking intent. Zinchenko's nailed in that first 11 for me straight away. Next one we come across now, I have put Robertson in. It could be purely go for Trent. I would, if I'm honest, rather go for Trent, but for 0.5 million, I might have to sacrifice that and go for Robertson. But I definitely want one of those two in. Great defensive stats, as we know. He doesn't offer the same as Trent, but 0.3, it's still enough for me. He's got to be up there, and he covers that Liverpool defence as well. So he gets nailed into that side. And then making up that final defensive spot for me at the moment is Doherty. I think he's been overlooked somewhat. Yes, he didn't play many games last season, so his XGI, which is 0.53, just blows everyone else out of the water. If again he can get anywhere near those sort of stats, playing for Tottenham, and the fixtures at home to Southampton looks good. Wolves at home, third game in, looks good. Forest away looks good. Again, I think, given what Conte has said, Royale not particularly in favour. There's rumours about him going. Conte's already come out and said he's not particularly one of his signings. It's for the club to have decided to buy him. So I think Doherty's that first choice. I will need to keep an eye on those friendlies. But if, as I suspect, he is that first choice right back for Spurs, he's absolutely nailed for 5 million. I'm going to overlook and ignore Perisic. I think Doherty's the one to go for. It saves me money. He's pretty much going to be nailed, we hope. And he has all those stats. He potentially is one of the finds, I think, of the season. So for Doherty, has to be a nailed on for me. That final spot in that defence, I'm going to come back to a little bit later on. We're going to move into midfield. And the one person I've identified quite early on, he is expensive as a premium midfielder. But Raheem Sterling, I think Chelsea's fixtures look good. Everton away, Leeds, Southampton away. Green fixtures in the first 5 games. Yes, they're away. Tottenham and Leicester at home. But his stats have been brilliant. 10 million is not a cheap price for Sterling. But XGI of 0.88, 163 points. Remember, playing for a side where he was not a regular in that Man City team. 2.46 shots per 90. Nothing special, nothing to write home about. But he's been phenomenal. He is nailed for me. I'm just really excited about him playing. He has not gone to Chelsea to have his minutes managed. He has gone there to play every week. And we know from Guardiola in the past that he has this great sort of recovery rate, that he can play game after game after game. And consistently over the last 3 or 4 seasons, no matter whether he's played 30-odd games or 20-odd games, his expected goal involvement is always high and right up there. For me, Raheem Sterling is absolutely nailed. If he produces that over the course of the season, only Salah's going to be outperforming him in terms of XGI. Son, as we know, will always tends to produce something more than XGI. But other than that, he's possibly the 3rd most coveted, most prolific scorer in midfield that we have got in the game. Playing in a Chelsea side that is very forward-thinking with those wing-backs, I really think Sterling's got to be in there for me. 10 million, it's a lot and sacrifices will have to be made, but he's worth it. Talking about sacrifices that have to be made, I think the next one that has to come in is Salah. As we've seen, he's top of those charts. I just think he's so consistent over such a period of time. I'm not going to delve into it in too deep because I just think everything, all the rhetoric's been talked about Salah in the past. Look at those amount of points. Top goal scorer with Son last season. Shots is insane, the amount of shots. He's on pens. He's playing for a Liverpool side that's just so attacking, so many options. But he's going to be nailed in it. Expected goals involvement per 90 over 1. Every game is expected to do something. 13 million for a player you expect to do something every single game isn't too much. He is definitely there and he is definitely nailed for me. Up front then, I do have my 2 slots filled. Jesus, I think, absolutely comes in. Again, we've looked at those Arsenal fixtures. They look really good for me. Shots in and around the box, 3. His XGI is still really good. Remember, he was playing out on the wing for a little while for Man City, doing a pretty good job out there. 0.73. Let's compare that to some of the other strikers in the league last year. Ronaldo was top 0.8 with expected goals involvement. Kane 0.77, so just behind was Jesus. What could he do with a prolonged period in a side which is built around him, supplying him with chances? Don't think Arsenal are going to be the same sort of side that Man City are, but he will be the main man in that side. I just think for 8 million, he's a steal, nailed on, playing for a top 4 or 5 side. He's got to be in there. Next one, last one nailed in my side. Could have been Kane. I'm going for Haaland. One of the reasons I'm going for Haaland is not only does his stats look brilliant, but I know it's not Premier League based, so that's a kind of a risk. Guardiola's again come out and said he thinks that the players coming in, including Haaland, should settle quite quickly. So I have to keep an eye on those Linux Community Shield coming out on Sunday. But he's just done at international level, domestic level, playing up front from Man City's side. Best side in the world, you could argue. I just think he's too good to overlook at 11.5 million. I would go for Kane. I definitely think Kane has got the best fixture on the opening day. But I don't want to go into that Bournemouth game, that second week, without Haaland. I don't want to book a transfer in. So I still think he could do something at West Ham. Don't expect him to outscore Kane. So do I go Kane, then transfer to Haaland? At the moment, I'm prepared to almost sacrifice some points to save a transfer later on. But those fixtures look great. Haaland looks fantastic. Man City so good. He comes in for me. On the bench, then, let's have a quick look at who would come in. I've put Hennessy in. It could be any £4 million goalkeeper. That's just purely cheap. There's no £4 million keeper that we can find at the moment that's going to play. So Hennessy is as good as anyone. Greenwood, 4.5 striker. I would normally go to Lap. If he gets a transfer, that could definitely change. But he's just taking up a Man City slot. So at the moment, just Greenwood gets the nod. He could change if something else happens in the transfer market. I think Andres Pereira has to come into that midfield. 4.5, Fulham, nailed. He's a good safety net to have. And I want the majority of my money in my playing 11. Then I've got De Silva. De Silva's played the last couple of fixtures in friendlies for Brentford. So I think he's a better option than maybe Colback for 4.5 million. Have to again keep an eye on that. Playing in for Brentford. So I don't mind having De Silva there, 4.5 as a playing midfielder. So total cost of my side then, 83 million. I've got 3 slots left, and we can have a little bit of fun with that in a moment. I'm going to start off by going, I want some sort of Man City player in that defence. I'm going to go Ederson. He has got the best figures in terms of defensive stats and goals conceded last season. #1 ranked defence in terms of expected goals conceded. He would then come into that goalkeeping slot, and I have my Man City defence covered. I could also go Diaz. I haven't got enough really to stretch into Cancelo. Diaz has a slightly better expected goal involvement than the likes of Laporte. Cancelo's 0.29, so Diaz isn't far away. For extra million I'm saving, I think Diaz is probably slightly more nailed than Laporte. I could be, you know what, we're playing Pep Roulette, that could change. But Diaz for me comes in, and then I've got 5.5 million. And at the moment, yes, there's been talk about Jimenez missing the opening games of the season, how that might affect Neto, how his goal involvement is down when Jimenez is not playing. For me, though, it's got to guarantee more minutes for Neto, surely. So for that outweighs the fact that possibly his output might be less, but he's getting more minutes. And that takes me up to 100 million. So that right now is my draft side. What I want to do is a bit of tinkering and a bit of a playing around now. And that's where the fun begins for me. Let's look at the side in its entirety then. 100 million, I'm bang on the money. For a second then, let's take away all the nailed players. Let's imagine nothing's off the table, and the obvious places we can start to save money, and we've all thought about it, is the likes of Salah and Sterling. So for a second, let's do the unthinkable. Let's drop Salah from the side, and we can bring in De Bruyne. That saves us £1 million. 13 million to 12 million doesn't seem like a lot, but £1 million, you'll be surprised what he can do. And let's face it, De Bruyne's fixtures look good. He's in form. He's nailed in that Man City side. Bournemouth at home, Palace and Forest in the first 5. I think you could make a pretty good argument for having him in your side. If you wanted to go Son, you're in a similar boat as well, 12 million. But that extra million starts to give us a bit to play with. We've already got Man City covered in defence with Ederson and Diaz. So what about if we start to move Diaz down to someone else? Let's say a Johnny, whose fixtures look pretty decent for Wolves as well. Yet they got a £4.5 million midfielder, and we've saved ourselves £2.5 million, who we can now start to build elsewhere into the side. You could just play 4 at the back if you wanted to. You could start to play an extra midfielder or upgrade a striker if you want for £2.5 million. You can start to do the likes of moving a Robertson to a Trent suddenly. You've still got 2 million to play with. If you didn't want to do that, you want to still got 2.5 million to play with. We could start to save money by going Mendy. Okay, so suddenly we've got double up on that Chelsea defence. Now you have lost that Man City player, but what you can suddenly do is go up from a De Silva to a Grealish, and you've still got £500 million. So you've got your 3 Man City players there, but they're all playing more offensively for you. For that £500 million, you could again go to a Robertson, to a Trent if you want to move that up. You've got loads of options. If you wanted to, instead of going for Grealish, you could start to go to Rashford and then bring Ederson back into goal. Rashford's had a good pre-season as well. Could he be playing up front? You've still got £500 million to play with, so you've got options nonetheless. Johnny can start to come out, and you could bring a Dalot in if you like the idea of Man City and Manchester United fixtures. They look pretty decent, and remember, you don't have to play Dalot in those Liverpool and Leicester away games, but the rest of those games look quite friendly, and he's been nailed in that Manchester United back 4. Lots of options. If you went back to Johnny, you've got the Rashford and Ederson, suddenly you've got Trent in there, you've got 100 million, so there's loads of options you could do here. Finally, what you could do is, if you wanted to get rid of Sterling, we can bring in Salah, get a Diaz. We've still got £1 million in the bank. You can then perhaps move, for one example, someone like a Rashford up to a Sancho. There's your money. I haven't even tampered or tinkered with those strikers. But at the moment, that's where we are with the side. So don't forget to give the video a like, guys. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll come back at you probably with a final draft later on in the week when we've got more information. We've seen the community shield. No doubt every side's been ripped up and torn up and started again on the basis of that. But I think I'm almost there for the start of the season. In the meantime, take care. Good luck. Speak to you soon.